Hey Yins, it's Megan, back to tell you once again about one of my favorite block parties, Open Streets Pittsburgh. The June Shindig is almost here, and for the first time ever, it's going through the Hill District. Bike Pittsburgh is shutting down 3.5 miles of roadway from the Hill through downtown, across the Roberto Clemente Bridge, and all the way into the north side. Leave your car at home for this one and come walk, bike, roll, even skip across the bridge if that is your thing. There's always so much to do and see at Open Streets Pittsburgh. Plus, the CityCast Pittsburgh team will be there with an open mic. It's all going down Saturday, June 29th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Make your plans at openstreetspgh.org.
Hey CityCast friends, producer Sophia Lowe here. I am still checking off all the classic local summer activities. I'm going to Presque Isle for the first time. I've got tickets to a Pirates game where I will be scarfing down a renegade dog with the mini pierogies. I'm so excited. But we also want to hear from you. What's on your Pittsburgh summer bucket list? Tell us and you might hear your answer on the show. You can email us at pittsburgh@citycast.fm, or you could text us or leave us a voicemail. Our phone number is 412-212-8893. That's 412-212-8893. We can't wait to hear from you.
Today on CityCast Pittsburgh. If you've been in the city for a few years, you have probably noticed some pretty dramatic shifts in some of our city's neighborhoods. One of the latest redevelopment frenzies has been happening on East Ohio Street on the north side. Some folks are even trying to make Restaurant Row a thing. But where's the line between bringing new life and maybe bringing too much change? We're with a reporter trying to make sense of all the noise. It's Wednesday, June 26th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. Eric Jankowicz is a reporter with Public Source. Welcome back to CityCast Pittsburgh.
Hi, Megan. Thanks for having me again.
Thank you for being here. Gosh, East Ohio Street is just its own little mecca, isn't it? There's all kinds of new spots now, like Fig and Ash, the Emperor Algo, the Nest, which is, really important to my needs right now with little kid clothes. But there's also all these businesses that have been there forever, like Bernie's Photo and the hardware store. It's always felt like such a lively little spot, but that 400 block, as you write about for Public Source, God, it's just got such a different vibe than it did a few years ago.
Yeah, and one of the other businesses that has been there for a while in that area is also Bistro To Go, which is right across the street from where a lot of our reporting focused on at the sort of, I guess, kind of calling it the beginning of East Ohio Street, at least on the western side. And so, yeah, you're seeing like those established places that you mentioned fusing with all of these new businesses. And most of I'd say the majority of the business owners I spoke to that were the established ones, they're excited about all of the new changes.
Eric, I'm curious from your perspective what East Ohio Street maybe meant to you before you started this reporting project.
That's a great question. So I up until the last few weeks, I lived on the north side, so I would go to East Ohio Street pretty often. There's, every Wednesday they would have banjo night at the fraternity.
At the Elks Lodge?
Yeah, exactly, at the Elks Lodge over there. And I remember afterwards there was a bar on the corner on East Ohio where they would play music in there, like kind of after hours, post banjo.
Yep. You walk over at 11 o'clock from the Elks Lodge, just up and around the corner, and get in and have your popcorn and have one or two more beers than you probably should have.
Yeah, you probably should go home at that point because it's a Wednesday night. And that place closed. So to me, East Ohio Street was always this place that it was like you never quite knew what was going to stay in the area. There was a certain amount of like impermanence to some of the businesses there. So then I remember like some of these newer businesses going in, and Fat Cat specifically, which is now closed, but it's also part of this effort of Restaurant Row. And I remember when that opening, just being like very aware of how different it was as a business for that area. Like it was, beers were quite expensive, more than $10. Cocktails were very expensive, at least for my salary. And,
Yeah.
and that's another part of this story is it's all about perspective. Like depending on who you talk to, like these new restaurants like EYV, Eat Your Veggies, like could be considered more high end depending on how much money you make, or it could be considered more affordable depending on how much more money you make than other people. To me, the story was very interesting to tackle because I had sort of just stumbled upon this interesting business model where a nonprofit was acquiring properties and then passing it off to a private company. And I just sort of wanted to just explore how that exactly went down.
Yeah, well, let's talk about how kind of that shook out. This has all happened over the last few years. The main arbiter in a lot of this is the Northside Leadership Conference. What happened? How did they get involved? How did the properties change hands? And how did that create this like totally different business district that, just didn't exist 5-6 years ago?
Yeah. So around 2017, the Northside Leadership Conference bought all of these properties on the 400 block, and they're like this nonprofit that basically is an umbrella organization for various Northside community organizations. So they kind of bring everybody together. I think there's like something like 18 groups involved.
I mean, the Northside itself is just enormous. I think people forget that because we just lump them all together.
Yeah, it's huge. But yes, around 2017, the Northside Leadership Conference, they bought all of these properties from one particular family that had been in the area for a very long time, I was told. And so they bought it for like around 1.8 million. And then in 2022, they went around and sold it to East Ohio Capital for a total of $50,000.
I would love to buy any piece of property here for $50,000, let alone multiple valuable parcels. How did all of this happen?
So we found that the executive director at the time, Mark Fatla, he was approached by a group of businessmen that owned East Ohio Capital, and they approached him with this idea that they had of buying up all of those properties on the 400 block, or at least the majority of them on that like northern side. And they approached the Northside Leadership Conference because they couldn't take out a loan from the bank because they had too many investments going on in other areas. So the banks considered it to be too risky of a loan. So these business owners approached Fatla and they were like, can you, as the Northside Leadership Conference, can you buy these properties and then we will take on the responsibility of like paying the loan off and also like taking care of the properties and bringing them back up to a state where they could then be leased out to restaurants and get like commerce going in that area. So yeah, they fell on this model of basically the nonprofit serving as like a middleman of a bank, sort of, where they took the money out and then sort of passed that along, or those costs, to the East Ohio Capital Company. And all of that sort of like agreement stuff was more or less like a handshake at the time. So there wasn't like a huge paper trail on it.
It also just feels kind of impressive that many players were able to agree on anything, a vision about anything. Like you just don't get that level of cohesion very often, especially around like redevelopment questions.
Yeah, and I think to the Northside Leadership Conference's credit, I think they, as an organization, this is kind of the work that they want to do, where they bring everybody, or attempt at least to bring everybody together under one unified vision and one unified like plan of action. And in this case, we found that there was at least one person, Angela Williams, who wasn't happy with the trajectory of the Northside Leadership Conference.
Yins know we are always here for a Best of the Berg weekend recommendation, and I am coming in hot with a big one. The Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy is teaming up with 11th Hour Brewing for a Parks on Tap tour. It's a summer beer garden series that kicks off June 30th at the Shenley Park Visitor Center. So from 1 to 7 p.m., you'll get live music, Black Cat Pizza's food truck. I can finally confirm it is so delicious. And of course, sip on a brewski. Plus, you're drinking for a cause because some of that beer money goes right back into our city parks. So mark your calendars for the Parks Conservancy's Parks on Tap tour. That's Sunday, June 30th in Shenley Park, Saturday, July 20th in Allegheny Commons Park, and Sunday, August 18th in Highland Park. Plus, keep an eye out for more about September. Tickets to the beer garden are totally free, but registration is recommended. So get online, that's pittsburghparks.org/beer-garden, and get your spots today.
Hi, I'm David Plotz, CEO of CityCast. Or, as I can say now, thanks to a few weeks with Babbel, hola, soy David Plotz, el jefe de CityCast. What if in 2024 you got a little bit better every day? When you're learning a new language with Babbel, that's exactly what you're doing. And if Babbel can help me start speaking a new language in just 3 weeks, imagine what you could do in a full year. I got started with Babbel because I realized that my girlfriend, who's a native Spanish speaker, and my son, who's in AP Spanish, were conspiring against me, or I thought they were conspiring against me in Spanish. I wanted to know what they were talking about. And now, thanks to literally just a few weeks of Babbel, I'm starting to be able to eavesdrop. It is rare that something so fun and simple, and Babbel is super fun and very simple, is also so useful. So here's a special limited time deal for CityCast listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Okay, Eric, you have given us the broad strokes. All of this started around 2017. Properties changed hands in 2022, and it was all done via this handshake agreement between the conference and that development group, East Ohio Capital. So tell us about Angela and any others who you maybe talked to who just didn't love everything that was going on at the time.
Yeah, there were people we spoke to who had concerns, but for whatever reason, they didn't really want their name attached to it. I think it was some of the
North
business.
Side is a small place. I get it.
Yeah. I think they were just they didn't want to make enemies or whatever it may be their concern was. But Angela Williams was willing to talk to us on the record. And, she was involved with the conference.
Yeah, she was involved. She was the president. You report that she resigned during all of this, and now she serves in the board of directors.
Yeah. And eventually she kind of pulled away from her role there in protest of kind of what she saw as overly focused on one commercial strip and not being focused enough on the rest of the North Side. I think her point was that the North Side Leadership Conference represents all of the North Side, kind of all of those neighborhoods we were just talking about, not just this area of East Ohio Street. So she had concerns about overly investing in one small area and not using resources in other areas.
Yeah, I know I've seen her talk a lot about California Kirkbride, for example, which is a neighborhood deeper in the North Side that I feel like people just don't talk about a whole lot. What about some of the folks there on East Ohio, like the old-timer businesses, the ones that have been there a long time, maybe more established? Do you think they saw all of this change coming?
I think they were kind of aware that the Northside Leadership Conference had acquired the properties. You mentioned some of the more established businesses, the owners of Farmer's Daughter and the owners of Bistro To Go. They all had said they were really looking forward to this redevelopment of the area, and both of them cited drug use and sort of what they saw as undesirable factors or presence in that area. They were kind of hoping that this redevelopment would push that away from the street, and and that the area would be able to kind of facilitate an atmosphere of people just wanting to like walk down the block and, maybe get brunch from Bistro to Go, and then, maybe go for a drink afterwards to Allegheny Brewing over there that opened recently.
I think they've just expanded. They've been like around the block, accessible from the other side for a while. But I guess, did they know that there was this like grand vision, I guess, for like a quote unquote restaurant row and everything that then comes from all of that?
Yeah, I think they had a sense, because I think you would have to understand who you're paying rent to. And in this case, they're paying rent to the company that's sort of behind this transformation. So I think you're getting in on something where it's going to be a form of a community or a form of, there's almost a camaraderie kind of thing to it, where there's going to be other businesses coming in there and creating what we were talking about, that atmosphere of like increasing foot traffic of a certain kind to attract potential customers to your business.
So was the development company then courting, a certain type of restaurant?
Yes. Yeah. So the development company, specifically Matt Hicks, he told me that they were definitely courting a certain kind of
or business, I guess.
A certain kind of business, but also a certain kind of entrepreneur that shared their values and their desires. So they were looking to increase just the general social cachet of the area to kind of make it so that people wanted to come from other neighborhoods into East Ohio Street for these places.
Do you know if that included any outreach to people of color, would-be business owners, entrepreneurs? Anytime we start using language like a certain type of something, it gets squishy from there.
Yes. Yeah. It's very squishy, and you never really know exactly what's going on behind closed doors. But my understanding, they weren't necessarily aiming for a particular demographic, and I don't think they were specifically going out of their way to look for Black business owners. And I think that's kind of what Angela Williams' point was, that all of these new businesses are not necessarily minority owned. Because
the Northside neighborhood historically has had a much larger percentage of Black and POC residents overall.
Yeah. So that's one of the other concerns too, is as all of this development continues, like what happens to that group of people that has historically lived in that area.
Yeah. What about the rest of that stretch of East Ohio? If you are trying to look 5, even 10 years down the line, do you think the 500-600 block area just beyond, so I guess everything before you get to the Parkway, is anything going to happen there? Is that development going to carry through?
Yeah, I definitely see it continuing, more businesses and restaurants and retail going up in there. And definitely it seems like the makeup of the neighborhood could potentially change as you get more affluent presence in there, for sure.
As a former North Sider yourself, has any of your reporting recently changed how you feel about, your old neighborhood?
It makes me sad that the neighborhood could lose the character it has now. It's probably the first neighborhood I moved to after moving from my hometown in New York City. And one thing that I loved about it so much was just how diverse it was in an area that is very much not diverse.
And the block itself, I guess, that we've been talking about, the 400 block, is that, I don't know, do you still go? Would you spend your dollars there? As
a journalist, I don't make enough money to go there that often.
You're not buying a $44 entree of lamb?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just a little bit outside of my price range and what I'm comfortable paying. But I still do, think about going to East Ohio Street. It's just a question of what the neighborhood might look like in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think the hope, and I think everybody would want to see this, is that you still have that mix of various offerings, and you have that mix that that brings a variety of different people. You never want to have like a monolith, and you never want to like have too much of a concentration of one particular group over another. I think definitely contrast is very important.
Well, Eric, we will be watching for future reporting on all of this. Thank you so much for your eyes on the North Side. Can't wait to see what you do next.
Thanks for having me, Megan.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Reminder, you can find Eric's work and everything we talk about on most of our podcasts in our show notes. Those are also available on our website at pittsburgh.citycast.fm/podcasts. We will be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Talk to you soon.
And the old country way, I think, is like Yankiewicz, but
Ooh,
I don't
you
think
should have
anybody.
that. That's fun.